We're going to now get started with our speaker, and I'm just going to briefly introduce Dr. Butler, who was inducted last year with the class of 2011. Dr. Butler has a BA from State University of New York, a master's in social science, emphasis in counseling from Binghamton University, and a PhD from Vanderbilt in education and human development. She's had lots of continuing education, including Loyola University, the Rome, Italy campus, Columbia University, and Harvard University Summer Management Development Program. She was a fellowship recipient in an international scholarship program at Cambridge University. When we inducted her last year, she was the Director of Enrollment Management at the United Negro College Fund. And I told everybody yesterday that if you're interested in being promoted this year, if you want your job to be improved, go sit really close to Dr. Butler, because the first thing I got, one of her inductees called me after I got her form to say, oh, by the way, I have a new job since you got my induction application. And a couple of weeks later, her other inductee called and said, ooh, I have a new job since you got my application. And then I sent Dr. Butler the information about today, and she says, is it too late? I have had a promotion since last year. So get real close to her if job promotion is something you want to see this year. She is currently, this is her new title, the Interim Executive Director of the United Negro College Fund Institute for Capacity Building and Director of Enrollment Management. And we talk about the treasures that we have in this organization. And what I asked her to talk about was, you know, when I hit 60, I've considered myself an elder now. And I guess there are people who consider me that for a long time, but I've finally claimed that title. And I work with a lot of young people, and I grew up and I was taught, and I believed that you got the education at all cost, and that was just the model that we were all given. And in this new world and new economy, as I look at the joblessness, and I know so many young people who have done and followed that model and somehow are not able to find anything, I asked Dr. Butler to talk to us today, and her title is The Relevancy of an Education in the 21st Century, because I want to hear from her so that I know that what I am telling young people is relevant. So at this point we will have Dr. Butler.
Good afternoon. Out of all the presentations that I do, I'm usually very nervous. I'm not nervous today. And part of the reason that I'm not nervous is because I know that I'm looking out at my sisters, and certainly my husband and my son. And so there's a level of comfort and reassuring. I know that I'm not going to share anything new, but I want you all to take this information as you interact with young people and let them know. So you're going to hear some statistics that I think that it's important for us to understand. I don't think we can talk enough about the importance of an education. And I'm looking here now for my title page, and somehow I think, oh, there it is. Okay. I got it all mixed up here. I apologize. And so I want to formally begin. Good afternoon, Madam President, COD leaders, and my sisters, and certainly family and friends who are here today. It is my honor to be a part of this awe-inspiring organization. I belong to a lot of organizations, but I don't think, other than my church, there's another organization that I'm willing to work as hard for. It's wonderful to stand here and share with you some ideas about something that is so important to me and to all of us, and that is education. Secretary Arnold Duncan, Secretary of Education, Arnold Duncan, stated, America's prosperity in the 21st century rests on how well we prepare our children for success in college and in the workplace. Because economic progress and educational achievement go hand in hand. Educating every American student to graduate and be prepared for college and to be successful in the workforce is a national imperative. And that has even that much more meaning for our communities. According to the U.S. Department of Education, the United States ranks third among industrialized countries in overall degree attainment, but slips to eighth among young adults, 18 to 24. The 2011 report on the condition of education stated between 2000 and 2010, undergraduate enrollment at four-year institutions increased from 7.2 million to 10.4 million. That's a 44% increase and is expected to reach 11.8 million by 2021. I share these statistics with you to let you know there is no shortage of students going into college. For black undergraduate enrollment, it increased 163% between 1980 and 2010. Yet, and this is key, in 2010, only 26% of African Americans held college degrees compared to 42% of their white counterparts. So what is that telling us? Well, the numbers are there. They are entering college, but they are not persisting until graduation. The question then becomes, how do we translate these numbers into college completion rates to ensure that our communities are thriving and viable for the 21st century? How do we move young people from uncertainty to success? Understand this. By 2018, not so far away from now, 63% of all the jobs available will require a college education. It's not a choice. It is something that must happen. We know at this very moment across the country, not everyone understands the value proposition of education and access. As a nation, we're at a critical juncture in time. We do have a president who understands the value of education for all Americans. And if you heard his speech the other night for the Urban League, you heard him, and I was very glad. I stood in my family room clapping because he talked about money going towards certainly not just community colleges, but HBCUs. And that's really critical because HBCUs continue to be a point of access for individuals who historically have not had access to other kinds of institutions. Often because, not because, in the 21st century racism, but often because there are those students who just did not focus, who did not do as well as they could have. And so many of the HBCUs have open admissions, so that if you come, they'll provide you with the developmental education or the remedial education that you need so you can be successful. And quite frankly, I often wonder, I did not attend an HBCU, but I often wonder, and I was sharing with Dr. Hicklin before we sat down, where I would be in my life, in my career, if I had not been a part of an Upper Bound program, or if there were not people in my community who saw my potential. Because I'm going to tell you what, when I graduated from high school, I didn't get an award for being at the top of my class. I didn't get an award for all these wonderful things that a lot of my friends or my white counterparts got. I got an award for being the most improved student. And yet, as I interface with my friends from high school, who are not my close friends, because believe it or not, all of my close African American friends from high school, all of us have a PhD. But for my white counterparts who were really high achieving and got all those awards, some of them never even went to college. But somebody believed in me and provided access And that is something that we do at HBCUs, and I'm so glad to be a part of that process. We've come a long way, we know that, but we've got a really long way to go. The new millennium has ushered in, it was ushered in by a really dynamic technological era. And if you all can remember, December 31st, 1999, what were you all afraid of? Absolutely, Y2K. I was absolutely afraid of what that meant. And by the way, in 1999, I was writing my dissertation. So I was backing up everything because I was just scared that, I would lose everything. And of course, there was nothing to be afraid about. But actually, in our communities, the digital divide continues to grow. And it doesn't have to grow. Because you know what? Even if young people don't have computers in their homes, there are computers in local libraries. So we should encourage every young person that we know to have a library card. And of course, when they're in the library, we certainly want them to do more than just go on the computer. We want them to read books. We want them to read. Xavier gets this all the time. Not only do I want him to read the newspaper, I want him to just read. I want him to be able to discuss things with me that are relevant, but I want him also to learn history. And so reading is fundamental in my household. I stand here aware of our shared commitment and passion for leveling the playing field for African Americans and children at all levels. Those children who are born and those children yet unborn. I am preaching to the choir, I know. I know you believe that having an education in the 21st century is imperative to the health of our communities and families. And when I speak of health, I'm just not talking about the physical health, I'm talking about the mental health. If there is not a sense of hope that young people have, then things happen. That hope turns into something else. It's amazing. I do a lot of work with African American males. In fact, I just had a book chapter come out that talked about the development of African American males at historically black colleges after their first year, and how they develop over time. You see, the incredible thing is they will find their communities if their communities aren't taking care of them. But the communities that they find, we may not like.
That's right.
They might be incarcerated. They might be gangs. It's amazing how, do you all remember that commercial that talked about the percentage of drugs that were in the inner city? And then there was a pause, right? And then they talked about the percentage of drugs that were in the suburbs, right? So our children can get distracted by a lot of things. They will find communities. We literally have to embrace them, no matter who they are, what they look like. If their pants are down, if they don't talk like we want them to talk, we need to make sure that we acknowledge their humanness. I was coming out of my office one day, and there was a group of young African American males. Clarissa, I believe you were with me. And the young man's pants was down, and I could see all of his underwear. And most times, these days, you got to be a little bit careful because you're just not sure how they're going to respond to you. But I said, young man, please pull your pants up. I don't want to see your underwear. And he was very respectful. He actually pulled them up. He did not say one thing disrespectful to me. And what he doesn't understand is he made my day. Because in that very action of lifting up his pants, what he told me was, I hear you, and you care about me. We need to begin to show that we care. We need to continue to show that we love, even if the children are not our own. That is really important. My husband kind of gets tired of me sometimes because in a couple of weeks, I've invited all these young people who I run into, what have you, and I said, I'm doing a little session at my house, right? And I'm doing it on college preparation, making college possible, so why don't you come over? My husband's going to cook. That's what I told them. I don't cook, right? But it's not just that. I really want them to know that somebody cares about them, somebody loves them, somebody is concerned about what's going to happen after they complete high school. I want to be that agent of change in their lives, as you all are. I can think of some assumptions about each one of the members of the consortium of doctors, right? And pardon me for my assumptions. So my first assumption is this. Each of us understands the value proposition of an education beyond the foundational education. That's my first assumption. My second assumption is each of us has played a significant role in guiding someone to college or beyond. I will bet my paycheck on that. And my third assumption is this. And finally, each of us understands, or should understand, there is a crisis in our schools, communities, and indeed the nation when it comes to educational attainment, access, persistence, and graduation in our community. It is a crisis. I hear Dr. Lomax, the CEO of UNCF, say this all the time. He said, we used to have a focus that talked about providing access to all minority students, right? Well, we have just gone through a process where he's unapologetic. He says, we need to focus on African American students, and we need to lean in. So I'm going to lean in. And I know you all are leaning in. And as a collective, we can move mountains. I believe it. I believe it. Otherwise, I would not be doing the work that I do. I'm really surprised that they pay me to do the work that I do, because it's my passion. It is my absolute passion. What did I hear back there?
Don't let them know.
I hear you. So what can we do to scale our efforts? Well, I thought you'd never ask. There are three things that I think that you can do, individually or within any organization that you belong to. And certainly we do this in COD. That's a part of our mission. That's probably why intuitively I knew that I was at home when I found COD. We need to reach out to students at the high schools, but not just the high schools that we're used to. Do you all know that they are warehousing our children in alternative schools? They are saying when there's a little bit of trouble, just a little bit of trouble, you can go to alternative high school. Last year, I was just talking to my hairdresser, and she said that her son was being sent to an alternative school. Well, her son is very active in the church. He's a wonderful young man. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Aren't you going to write a letter to the Board of Education? She goes, well, I'm not sure what to do. Well, I wrote the letter for her. I said, and let's find out why. Do not accept this. But that's what's happening to our young people. And so, they're going there. The ethos is not what it needs to be in those alternative high schools. So they lose hope. And when young people lose hope, it turns to violence or other self-destructive kinds of behavior. We have to make sure that all young people feel a sense of hope, even when they're not doing things structured the way that we want them to be structured. So that's the first thing. And also reaching out to young people who are not necessarily in our own economic brackets. I think that's really key. Spend some time with young people and expose them to the theater. Take them to the church with you. Take them out to a fancy dinner. I can remember the first time I saw a Broadway play. I was really young, but there was somebody in my community who thought this little poor girl should ride on a train from Schenectady, New York to New York City, about 2.5 hours away, and let her see theater. Well, theater really was how I survived. And you all may not know this, but theater was my undergraduate major. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Messer has been in several productions that I've done. One that I would do on every single campus, and that's for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow was enough. And I believe theater is an expression, it's a way to reach people that you may not necessarily would have been able to reach, but expose them. The reason I say take the young people out to dinner, so you can help them learn how to eat at a fancy restaurant, how to use I didn't know that. I didn't know that until I got older. And so these are the kind of things that I want to pass on. Conduct workshops to show young people that college is possible, understanding their advantage toolkit that I talk about. Here's some things that needs to be in every student's toolkit. a solid grade point average, involvement in extracurricular activities, demonstrated leadership skills, community engagement and volunteerism. Volunteerism at HBCUs are part of the requirements to graduate. We have to instill in our young people the notion of giving back, of caring about somebody other than themselves. There's somebody that I know sitting in this room, I'm going to tell a story. Her father used to make her give away her favorite toy during Christmas time. So all year she would have it, right? She would take really good care of it, but she had to give it away to somebody else. What that did was teach her the notion of sharing. Because it's easy to give away something that you don't want. Yeah. It's hard to give away something that's important to you. I think that was a valuable lesson, and I can see this in her life. Tony Wagner, in his book, The Global Achievement Gap, outlined the following skill sets that's needed in the 21st century. And of all the things that I said, I think these are the most important. There are 8. Critical thinking and problem solving. We have to teach young people how to think critically, how to reason, how to solve problems without taking out a gun or fighting. That is so important, because we're not just talking about in our communities, we're talking about the global stage. Collaboration across networks that can lead to influence. You don't have to have a PhD to move mountains, to influence people. You just have to care and have a knowledge base. That is really important. Agility and adaptability. You know, we can get so narrow and dogmatic about how we do things and what's important to us. But teaching young people that the 21st century skills will require the ability to overcome and adapt, to be agile in one's thinking and one's position, that is extremely important. To take initiative and to have a sense of entrepreneurialism. All of us in here know that if you work for somebody else, you're never really going to be rich, right? That if you really want to be rich, and you know something, there's nothing wrong with being rich, because the richer you are, and we're all rich in spirit and willingness to share. But I'm talking about economic wealth, because then we begin to share that and provide and develop opportunities for other people. There's nothing wrong with that. Have a sense of entrepreneurialism. You never know what you might discover that might change somebody else's life. Effective oral and written communication skills. I got a lot of opportunities in life, not because I was the smartest one, but because I was someone who was never afraid to speak in front of a crowd. And I think having wonderful writing skills and being able to speak effectively is a skill set that, to teach our young people and to pass that on, will equip them so richly for this world in which we live in. So make young people write. I can tell you right now that speaking well also got me in trouble. And the reason it got me in trouble, not because my mouth always went, it did, but because in high school teachers assumed that I did not need to take any more English, right? So they let me take some advanced courses that did not have a lot of writing. And as a result, my writing skills are not where I want them to be. And I continue to grow. So being able to write well and to speak well are so key to individual and collective advancement. Assessing and analyzing information, boy, forget Wikipedia, you know, those quick and easy answers, you know, answer.com. Has anybody ever used that on the, I have. But really seeking knowledge for knowledge's sake, and learning how to analyze and developing a perspective and being able to articulate that perspective. That's really key when you're an industry leader, a corporate leader, or when you're just, you know, in your family, being able to talk about things and doing it from an analytical perspective that helps your family understand why you've made a decision that you've made. It's so key. Young people will understand you better. And finally, 8, young people need to have curiosity and imagination. We want them to be curious about the world in which they live. We want them to travel broadly. We want them to meet people of different cultures and to learn from them. These are the 8 fundamental skill sets that's needed in the 21st century to be relevant. This is what I believe is important for us to underscore when we work with and talk to young people. Preparing for college and enrolling and graduating from college is good, but it's not sufficient. We have to instill in our youth the importance of acquiring and building on the skills just that I outlined above. So what is the relevancy of the 21st century, of education in the 21st century? It's about the vitality and sustainability of our children, our families, and the quality of all of our lives. It's about legacy building and it's going to take what everybody knows in our culture, the village, to do. Author Ernest Gaines stated, "Words mean nothing. Action is the only thing." Doing is the only thing. So let's continue to do God's work, and maybe one day a young person we help will lead the free world with grace and dignity and wisdom that you help to instill in him or her. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if any of you have any questions.
Being from the Baptist church, you know, there is a tradition about the call and response, and that after the minister gives a sermon, then someone from the body of the church responds to the message.
Absolutely.
I'm here today.
Amen.
You know, it just took me back. Here I am in Savannah, Georgia, my hometown, and I can recall examples of people that you talked about and the things that you talked about, the actions that you took. There were people who encouraged us every day about going to college because they always said to us, "Hey boy, hey girl, what you gonna be when you grow up?" Everybody asked you that.
Yeah.
Even the winos on the street. We would walk to school, and we walked to school. At 6 years old, I was walking to school on East Broad Street, down there in a part of East Broad by Gwinnett that's not too good. But there are plenty of winos, and they'd be sitting there on the curb, and they say, "All right, you kids, don't be lollygagging on the street. Get on down there. You hear that bell ringing."
Wow.
They invested in us. They knew the value of what they didn't have. And just because they didn't choose to have it didn't mean they couldn't see the value of it for us. And they encouraged us. They never bothered us. We didn't have to worry about our kids being kidnapped and you know, all these things that are happening to kids today. You could turn your kid out on the street. I went to music lessons at Miss Frazier's over there on Havisham Street and walked there every day. And now I wouldn't walk there now. As an adult, I'm scared, you know, to be out on the street. So it's amazing that our community, the African American community, has understood the importance of every concept that you have talked about. And they did it without a college education. They were domestics. They were, you know, porters on the train. They were people who did not have the access to the college education, but they knew education was the key. And so they wanted for that next generation to have that education. And they encouraged us. What are you going to be when you grow up? And they would even tell you, I want you to go to such and such a school. I want you to go to that Morehouse College. Or I want you to go to that Spelman. I had an uncle wanted me to go to Wayne State University. That's all he could talk about. Now you got to go to Wayne State University. I didn't go to Wayne State University, but that's all right. I went to college, and that was the important thing that he instilled. So people in your family saw your potential, and they would not let you get by with it. They would take no less than the best from you. When they would get your report card, what is this B? And you thought you had done so well to get that B. And I said, what is this B? Now this has got to be an A next 6 weeks. You see, they just kept upping, you know, and pushing the goalposts back, as they say, and upping the standards for us. And they kept us what? Continually reaching. We didn't have time to look at, you know, these housewives and all these different things they got on reality TV. We didn't have time. We didn't have TV either. We didn't get TV till I was 10 years old. So I had to make up, you know, make my own fun. And you know what we did? We used our imagination. You give us an oatmeal box, a cylinder from the toilet paper or from the wax paper or something like that. And honey, we would create our own toys. Yeah. You know, things that people throw away now, we turn them into toys. Yeah. You see, and that's why in your neighborhood and the people you grew up with all have PhDs. Right. Because they were in that kind of community who would not take less than that from them. Right. That's right. And that's what we've got to do. Not accept any less from our kids. And like you said, we've got to embrace them and bring them from where they are, take them from where they are forward, and don't judge them. Yes. Because I'm going through something now with a young family where they've had to go into a shelter, 4 kids and a mother, because the man broke a nose in 2 places, threw her across the laundry room, gave her a concussion and all of this. And she's got these 4 kids to raise. And I look at her and I tell you, my heart is breaking because I know the future that lies ahead. And I'm trying my best to help her in every way that I can. We got to embrace these families. We can't turn our back on these families. We got too many families like this. And my husband said to me one time, he said, would you please not adopt any more people? And I said, until the day my eyes are closed, yes, I will be doing God's work. Because there's nothing more important for me to do in my life. It's not what I'm doing in this moment. When I die, all it adds up to is 1943 and a dash and whatever that end date is. Yes. And what I have done in that one little dash is going to be all that I'm worth. And my investment is in people. Yes. That's the greatest memorial to your life.